All right, we'll begin now. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, it's with great pleasure that we welcome you all today to this Azure Envision workshop. We are thrilled to have all our Microsoft partners with us today, and thanks everybody for your continued support to us, and also looking forward to an amazing partnership with the rest of the partner community today. Um, I hope everybody is able to see my screen.
Yep, all good.
Perfect. So today it's going to be me, Karan Kapadia, and along with me, I'll be having Girish Sharma, who's our Azure Solutions Engineer, presenting to you today. And to begin with, basically, what is Azure Envision Workshop? So it's a new style workshop that recently Ingram has been going on with. We already did our first workshop last month, and then we have a workshop right now, and then we also plan to have future workshops in a similar way. It's more on educating our partners around different cloud practices, specifically focused on Azure and services around it. And also we'll be covering 3 real case scenarios, which Girish is going to deep dive further and kind of explain all these cases individually to us. And also one more thing, if there are any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll be discussing those later at the end of the slides. And yep, so moving on to the next slide. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry. So also, before moving to the cases, also just a heads up for everybody that Ingram Micro, we do have our own in-house professional services team wherein you can leverage the different services that are being offered by our team, including like migration services, any kind of POC services that you might be looking for, along with some cost optimization and security services. Again, as I said, this is an in-house team. We don't offload all these projects elsewhere. So, it's pretty much that our technical bench is kind of confident and, with certifications and everything to kind of deliver the projects that you might be looking for. And now let's quickly dive into the customer case. So picking up the first case today, we have this company, Datum Inc. It's an SMB company, and currently they are facing challenges due to various data silos across various departments and platforms. Now, because of this fragmentation, it has led to inefficiencies and kind of there's an inconsistent data quality and some increased security risks. Now, the lack of a unified data management strategy has kind of made it difficult for the company to kind of generate accurate reports and also leverage insights. Now, in order to address these issues, Datum Corporation has decided to test out Fabric. It's much, I wouldn't say newer, but kind of a new technology by Microsoft. There are different SKUs out of which Datum has kind of found out that F64 SKU works for them. So now looking further into this, I'm going to hand it over to Girish to kind of explain this further.
Thank you, Karan. If you can confirm, you can see my screen because I'm going to share now. And I'm audible.
Yep, all good. Thanks, Girish.
Awesome. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome once again to all the partners. Really appreciate everybody taking time and joining us in today's workshop. My name is Girish Sharma. Now, the situation faced by Datum Corporation is just not restricted to enterprise-grade customer. Any company, regardless of their size, who want to use data to their advantage are facing these issues. Now, on top of that, with the recent uptick, if you look at in the AI implementation, more and more companies, they want to incorporate artificial intelligence into their application. But the success of that will depend upon how good is their data. Now, if the grounding of the data is being done against information which is not clean and not in right format, the companies are not going to get the desired result. And this is what is consistent with the survey that was recently being done. Almost 70% of the leaders, they believe that they need to have a right bridge between data analytics and artificial intelligence for their overall enterprise data strategy. And almost 90% believe that utilization of artificial intelligence in the organization will give them competitive edge. But this was interesting. Based on the survey that was done, 10% of the usage of the data will lead to significant amount of revenue generation for any organization. So the question arises, what is the solution? The problem which is being faced by Datapin Corporation is getting quite common. Now that's where Microsoft Fabric will come into play. Now Microsoft Fabric is an end-to-end data analytics solution. Now, if you look at any data analytics journey, a data has to go through different stages. Now, this includes extraction, transformation, loading, and not to forget the security implication it can have if the data is not handled properly at all these different stages. And that's where Microsoft Fabric will come, because rather than having to deal with multiple products and multiple vendors, it provides you one umbrella service all under the Fabric. Now, if I have to use an analogy, very similar to Microsoft Office, which consists of various applications. For example, it has Word for document authoring, you have Excel for spreadsheet, PowerPoint for presentation. And all the data in these applications are stored in central repository called OneDrive. On the same line, Fabric consists of 7 core services. You have Data Factory for integration, data engineering for ETL processes, data science for machine learning, warehouse for storage, Power BI for visualization. And recently, Microsoft also included 2 services under real-time intelligence, which used to be Data Activator and real-time analytics. And the good thing is that regardless of which application under Microsoft Fabric umbrella you're going to utilize, your data is getting stored under central repository called OneLake. OneLake is a storage which is built upon Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, which enables hierarchical namespace and also prevents duplications and silos of data. Now, the good thing in the case of data incorporation is that they've already gone through a POC, and based on their finding, they have decided to go with F64 SQ. Now, how much it will cost and what will be the deployment steps? So let's look into the first pricing calculator, how much on an average it will cost them on a monthly basis. Now for that, I'm going to flip over to Azure pricing calculator. And this calculator is generally available. Now, in order to price this opportunity for data, you can go and search for Fabric. I can pick Fabric in this case and go to the View button. Now, your cost depends upon the region you're going to deploy these services. And this is standard with any Azure services that you're going to utilize. Now, in this example, the customer is out of Canada, so I'm going to use Canada Central as a region. And Fabric capacity comes in different SKUs. As you can see on the screen, it starts with F2 and goes all the way up to 2048. Now, in this case, since we are talking about F64, I'm going to pick that. And I'm going to assume that they're going to utilize 730 hours, which are the average number of hours in a month. But in case this services is not getting utilized 24/7, you can always tweak the number over here. I can also add the storage component. So there are 2 parts to this. One is the Fabric capacity, where your 99% of the cost is going to come from, and the OneLake storage. For this example, I'm just going to pick 100 gig. And at the bottom, you can always change the currency from US to Canadian dollar. And you can save this estimate and you can, for your future reference, you can also export this in an Excel sheet. And if you want, you can also share this link with your end customer. The price that you see is an end customer price. And optionally, if you want, you can also go and enable the reservation which we're going to talk a little bit more maybe at the end of this presentation. But this is how you're going to price out this opportunity for data incorporation. And as I mentioned, these are end customer pricing, so you can definitely share that with your end customer. So with the pricing being done, let's look at how the deployment of Fabric going to take place. Now for that, I'm logged into the Azure portal with my admin credential. And from here, you can go and search for Fabric in the global search bar. I'm going to pick Fabric here, and let's go and create a capacity. You just need to fill some basic information, such as under what subscription you're going to go and deploy this service. I'm going to pick the resource group, which is like a logical container where all your resources going to reside. You can give the name for the capacity and pick the region of your deployment. So in this case, it's Canada Central. And you can always pick the size that you want to utilize. As I mentioned, Fabric comes in different capacity. For this example, it's F64. And you can also specify the admin for this capacity. So this is the person who will be responsible for managing this. You can always go and add because it's closely integrated with Azure Active Directory, also known as now Entra ID. And it's just as simple as the review and create button. And once this Fabric capacity is up and running, so I've already deployed one, as you can see over here, with the name ITS Fabric, and it's in the resource group Fabric RG. And the location for this deployment is in Canada Central. If I go and expand this, I'll get the complete control from the blade over here. I can go and explore the activity log, so how my capacity is behaving. I can also have the access control to the person I want to give access to. I can also tag it, which is a good idea in case I want to specify against which cost center the cost is going to come from. Plus, we get some more features such as creating the alerts for this capacity, advisory recommendation. So all these capabilities I get from this portal over here. And another advantage of this is that I can always go and pause this service. So if I know that if this service is not going to run 24/7, I can go and pause it, as you can see right now. So during that time, your capacity unit won't get charged. This is the manual way of doing it. Or what I see in most of the production environment, people, they attach a runbook. So you can always automate this process in which at a specific schedule, these capacity will be switched off and switched on. So that capability is also there for which you can create an automation account. Now with your Fabric capacity deployed, let me also show you how the experience is going to be when it comes to accessing this from the Fabric portal. For that, I can go to let me just go to the Fabric portal. This interface is right in front of me. So let me just go and open a new one here. So you can go to app.fabric.microsoft.com, log in with the credentials that you have. And this is your management console. And you can see that you get the complete control. You don't need to worry about managing different portals and different products. And in this example, I've already created a workspace. So workspace is nothing but a collaborative container. And the first thing that you're going to do is attach that capacity with the workspace that you're going to utilize. So for this case, I can go to the workspace setting. Now in this example, I'm utilizing the trial version, as you can see, but I can go and edit it, and I can go and attach to the Fabric capacity that I've deployed here. Right now, it's in grayed out right now because that's in pause state, but I just wanted to show you that's the way you're going to go and attach the capacity that you've deployed on the Azure with your workspace. Now, with that being done, you have the complete control. You can go and deploy resources by going to the new item. You can get data. You can create your pipelines. You have the complete control, right? And on top of that, if you want, flipping between the Fabric experience and the Power BI is as simple as that, just changing the button over here. So I'm right now in the Power BI experience, as you can see. And I can also manage my cost by going into the cost management on the Azure portal, or you can also utilize Capacity Metric app, which is another great resource that you can go and download right from the Microsoft Store in order to keep a track of where the cost is coming from, whether it's your capacity unit, your storage, all these things can be tracked by utilizing this Fabric Capacity app. So with this, DataPin Corporation has successfully deployed Fabric in the environment, and this completes scenario number one. With that, I'll go back to the presentation, and let's go to the second scenario, which is for AdventureWorks.
Yep. Thanks, Girish. So, yep, as mentioned, now moving on to the second case, AdventureWorks. Looking at the background, they have a hybrid IT environment with 20 servers across on-prem data centers, multiple cloud providers, and edge locations. And today, the biggest challenge they're facing is operational inefficiencies, security risks, some compliance challenges, and fragmented management. They do have a Windows Server 2019 and SQL Server 2014 in various locations. And now they're looking to explore options in order to streamline operations across multiple sites and kind of also look into the management capabilities. Yeah, over to you, Girish, to kind of explain this further now.
Thank you, Karan. Now, this is another scenario which is getting quite common. Now, if you look at in the last 20, 25 years, data centers has changed drastically. We have moved away from the mainframe computer. We have adopted the virtualization technology. A virtualization technology which totally changed the landscape of data center. Now we are utilizing new tools in order to manage our resources. And now in the last 10 years, people, they have already started now exploring cloud and they have started moving their workloads into cloud too. Now that brings its own challenges because your workloads are distributed across various sites, across various locations. Now, if your data center landscape has changed, I think you will agree that we can't just continue to use older technology in order to manage that. And that's where Azure Arc can come and shine because it gives you one single interface where you can reach your resources regardless of the operating system and a hypervisor. Now, another good thing about the Azure Arc is that you can configure consistent VM extensions. Now, VM extensions are typically native to Azure resources. So when you go and deploy resources on the Azure side, some of these extensions get deployed automatically. Now, through Azure Arc, you can use the same extension in order to manage your resources, whether it's on-prem or in third-party cloud. Now, another challenge that we see is that now you cannot have discussion on any cloud deployment without compliance and having proper policy. Through Azure Arc, you can also apply these Azure policies to your on-prem resources to make sure that there is a standard approach across all your environment. Plus, you can apply the same security features that you typically associate with any cloud deployment because Azure Arc integrates with some of the other services. For example, it is utilizing Entra ID, which is an identity service. So you can make use of multi-factor authentication, conditional access policy. And when these Azure Arc resources get onboarded into cloud, in Azure Cloud specifically, they become part of Azure Resource Manager. So you can also make use of role-based access control to make sure only the relevant people they have access. Now, the idea here is that you want to have single interface from where you can manage all these resources, regardless it's sitting on-prem, third-party clouds like AWS GCP, or if it is already in Azure. One standard interface to manage all these resources for you. Now, when it comes to management, Azure Arc gets even more into detail. Now, if you look at from the licensing perspective, we come across a lot of companies, they have older operating system, which are typically end of life. Now, if you look into the Microsoft portfolio from the service perspective, every product had its life cycle. Typically for Windows servers, on an average, these are for 10 years. Now, what happens in case the companies, they still want to use these workloads? Our recommendation for them is that if it is possible, maybe to upgrade to the latest operating system or to move to the cloud. Because if you move the Server 2012 or even SQL 2014, these machines will get free extended security updates by moving to the cloud. But in certain case scenario, we come across that because of the compliance reason and application dependencies, they have to keep these workloads on-prem. For that, you can also enable extended security updates through Azure Arc. You still have this option of buying these licensing from open volume licensing option. But if you want to enable per hour billing, that is also possible. And a lot of our partners, they have already started utilizing this. And as I mentioned, once these machines or these servers, they get onboarded into Azure, they become part of Azure resource, and you can apply other security and compliance policy, whether that's through Defender for Cloud, Sentinel, Azure monitoring services, all these things will be enabled once these are looped in. But extended security updates, I think, is a great way because you're not getting locked into long-term contract. Plus, these are all per hour billing and no contract to sign. And if you want, you can always get out of this and remove these resources. Or in simple term, maybe you can just maybe upgrade them to the latest operating system for which you won't need any extended security updates. Now, another advantage of this is that like any data center admin work, you still need to patch your machines, you need to update at a regular time. Now, the machines which are already there in Azure, which are native to the Azure, I will say you get free update management right out of the box. But for the resources which are enabled through Azure Arc, you can still utilize Azure Update Manager to streamline your patch management. Again, you can make utilize of role-based access control to make sure that only relevant people, they have access to it. And then you can also automate this process to schedule these updates and patch management at a specific time. So all these capabilities are also possible through update management, which by the way, AdventureWorks wants because they have almost 20 servers which are distributed across various sites. And also they are running certain old operating system like SQL 2012 and Server 2012. For that, you can enable extended security updates through Azure Arc. But all these capabilities are there for machine which are enabled through Azure Arc in your environment. So let's look into for AdventureWorks, how the pricing going to look like. We're going to go back to the pricing calculator. For this, I'm going to search for the Arc service. And by the way, you can also customize these estimate too. I can put the name of the company. So let's name it AdventureWorks. It's going to be in Canada Central. And for the Azure Arc enabled server for the policy guest configuration, it's going to be based on per server. So in this case, we are talking about 20. So I'm going to change that. And the price is based on per server. Now they also have SQL 2014 with the 32V core. So for that, they can also enable extended security updates. So I'm going to pick that. And they're running standard version. And I'm going to change the number of cores to 32 here. And you can also add the update manager because as I mentioned, you can utilize Azure Arc to update your machine. Now that needs to be added separately. So for that, I'm going to go to the search. And let's add Azure Update Manager. And by the way, this is also based on the number of servers. So you can see that Update Manager is included by default for the Azure resources, but in this case, we're talking about Arc enabled. So let's add 20 machines for this example. And let's go and change the currency. I can always export this in an Excel sheet, which you can present, save this, and I can also share this with a partner or with the end customer. So all these capabilities are there for you. So this is how you're going to price out this opportunity for adventure work. Okay. So how the deployment going to look like when it comes to deploying Azure Arc services for adventure work? So let's go to the portal. I can again search for Azure Arc service in the global search bar. That's one way of doing it. Or I can go and in the all services. This service is part of hybrid multi-cloud. So I can go and search for Arc over here too. And by the way, you can always click on the star icon and you can pin this under the favorite so that you don't have to keep on searching. So let me go and show you how the experience is going to be. Now I'm on the overview button, as you can see. From here, I can onboard my machines by clicking on the Add Resource button. Now you have this option of adding machines in bulk, or you can do one by one. And most of the time, you're going to add this in multiple servers. So what it is basically is to enable Azure Arc on your machine, you need to generate a script and fill out some basic information. For example, your subscription, the resource group, the region that you're going to deploy, right? And you can always tag it, as I mentioned, for cost management and just to identify which are the folks who are creating these resources. I can download and run this script. It's a PowerShell script you're going to run on the machine. And what it's going to do is deploy a connected machine agent, which is also sometimes called Azure Arc agent. And that's the way it's going to talk to the Azure Arc service. Now, once the machines are onboarded, I've already done this for example, you can come under the machine. You can see all the machines which are brought into this service. So you get the complete control over the inventory, as you can see. Or I can also go under specific data services. For example, I can go under SQL Server instance because I have SQL Server running on-prem. This is also onboarded, and you get information about name of the machine, under which resource group it is, and I can go and add more services by going into this. So some important information, as you can see, what edition of SQL Server I'm running on this, right? Computer name. I can also go and enable the license by clicking on the licensing button. Now, in this case, it says Server 22, so I don't need any extended security updates. But if you want, you can always go and enable pay-as-you-go license because that is also part of the Azure Arc too, right? In case you have any machines which are with the on-prem licensing with software assurance, you can also go and specify over here. And by doing that, you also get some added functionalities as part of the software assurance. But all this control you can see, you can get it from here. That's the one that I was talking about, extended security updates. Now this is grayed out because I don't need, because this is on the server 22, which is not, which doesn't require any extended security updates. So all the control I've got from here. Now I can do more stuff from this interface. You can go and add VM extensions. So basically, in case I want to monitor my resources, I can go and add extension for monitoring. So basically, in simple term, it's nothing but a monitoring agent which can be deployed on these machines. And then you can have monitor these resources, how they are behaving. On top of that, I can go and enable the policies to make sure that I have standard policies across my entire organization, regardless of where my machine is running, whether it's on premises or in cloud. I can go and define my policy definition. For example, if I want to enable guest configuration, I can go and search for it. And any specific policies I can go and enable on my resources. So this resource, as you can see, is sitting on-prem, but just by utilizing the power of cloud, I can manage it, enforce my policies. All these possibilities are there from here, right? And on top of that, I can also go and updates my machine. I can go and create a schedule. So you can see. So we can add a schedule over here. I want this to have a recurring affair. I can put a start and an end date. And if you want to run these updates at a specific time, which are typically off-peak time, you can always configure right from here, right? So all these capabilities are there for you. And you can also go and enable change tracking options. So any changes which is happening on the registries, this can be tracked. Now this requires deployment of a log analytic workspace, but this option is also available for you. But just want to point out one more thing over here. Depending upon if you are utilizing some other services within Azure, for example, if you have a Defender for Server Plan 2, or if you have enabled extended security updates for your on-premises machine, there are certain services you get free along with them. For example, if you have Defender for Plan 2, then you get update management included in that service, and that's also included in case you have extended security updates or even pay-as-you-go licensing subscription for these on-prem resources. So a lot of options. I would recommend that you talk to the Azure rep, and I'll be more than happy to continue this conversation further with you. But with this, AdventureWorks has properly configured their resources both on premises as well as on cloud. And this gives them one management console from there, manage all these resources under one umbrella. So this completes our scenario number 2. With that, let's go to the third scenario and the final one, which is for Woodgrove Bank.
Perfect. So considering the third case now, Woodgrove Bank, it's a small scale bank wherein their infrastructure is hosted on an on-prem VMware. And everybody knows with the recent changes on VMware, and also the service coming for refresh, the customer is looking to move to the cloud. They have around 15 servers and are looking to add more as the business keeps on growing, and they kind of have to add more capacity. They recently completed an Azure migration assessment, and the results were there are 10 B2MS machines with 128 gigs of HDD storage per server, and 5 numbers of D2 SV3 machines, again with 128 gigs of SSD storage per server. So let's look further. What are the solutions for them?
Thank you, Karan. Now, in this example, we have specifically selected VMware just because we are getting a lot of calls from the partner. There's been recent changes with the acquisition with Broadcom. They have significantly increased the licensing cost for their hypervisor. And I think that's where the opportunity is there with a lot of partners that they can move them to the cloud or at least give them the option. But I will say that this is just not restricted to specifically VMware only. Regardless of the environment that you're having, whether it's on Hyper-V or even on physical boxes, which we come across, it's a greenfield opportunity. And the best option I will say is to move them to the cloud in case they're facing security issues or the hardware is coming for refresh. But in this case, Woodgrove Bank specifically, as we mentioned, that they're running on VMware. But the important point I want to make here is that any migration journey, whether it's big or small, it requires proper planning. And you need to have a proper tool in order to achieve that. And that's where Azure migration services will come into play. Now, the good thing about this service is that it's a two-in-one solution. It does assessment for you and can also do the migration for you. Typically, if you look at any migration services can be divided into 3 stages. In the first phase, discovery of assets are done, right? We need to know what inventory we are dealing with. After we have a good hand on the inventory that we are dealing with, then we can move to the next phase, which is to do the assessment. As you know, on Azure side, Azure comes with different services and different tiers. So to properly know what should be the right size for me is also important part of any server assessment. So that's also done through this migration services too. And you can break down these services based on storage, compute, where the majority of your cost is going to come from. And not only that, it also gives you the dependency visualization. Let's say that in any environment, you have multiple servers. You have a front end, you have a middle tier, and you have a back end in databases. Now, when you run dependency visualization, and out of these 3 machines, which might be on a separate boxes, and you're only thinking of moving maybe one, the recommendation will be that you move all them in group so that you get the least latency and you get the best performance. So that is also part of the dependency visualization too. But the good thing, as I mentioned, this tool can cater to any environment, whether it's physical, virtual, uh, VMware or Hyper-V. You get a complete breakdown how your cost going to look like, and also drill down into some of the cost optimization and security option that you can go and implement after your machines are deployed on Azure. You can see on the screen, it gives you information about Azure readiness, not only for the machine which can be moved to the cloud. If there is a server which doesn't have the compatibility, it will make a recommendation that this is not a right fit. So in that scenario, you might want to maybe keep this on premises, or you want to maybe change the operating system which is compatible on the Azure. But most of the time, any kind of operating system, whether it's Windows or any flavor of Linux, the chances are is going to be compatible to be deployed on Azure. But in the case of Woodruff Bank, they have gone through this assessment process and there are specific recommendations. So let's try to price out this opportunity for this bank. For that, again, I'm going to go to the pricing calculator. And I'm going to go under the compute because in this case, we're talking about VM. So let's go and expand that. Now for the first set of servers, the recommendation is that it's a B2MS machine. So let's go and search for it. And the number of machines we're talking about are 10 here. So let's go and pick that. And for the hard drive for these machines going to be standard HDD, and they want 128 gig to be specific. So let's go and add that. And for the second set of machines, it is D2SV3. That's the recommendation from the tool. So let's add that too. And for these servers, the recommendation is to add premium storage. So I'm going to pick premium SSD. And again, the size going to be 128, but the number of machines here is 5. So let me change that. And this is assuming that these machines are going to run 24/7. I can always add the saving plan of reservation to keep my cost down. So that option is always there. But this is how the cost is going to look like for them when it comes to Canadian dollar for these 15 machines in total, including the storage, right? Again, I can save this, export it, share it with my with the end customer if required, or you can always add your margins on top of that too, right? So all these capabilities are there for you. So how that is going to look like when it comes to enabling this service on the Azure portal. So let's go and look into that. I'm going to go and search for the migrate service. Now, any Azure migration services start with a project. So you can see on the left side of the blade, I have the complete control, what kind of migration I'm talking about here, right? But let's go and click on this Discover and Assess. Creating a project, you can start by clicking on this Add button. And again, you can specify the subscription, your resource group, the name of the project, and the what geography we are talking about. There is typically no data which is leaving your on-premises environment, right? So you can be rest assured with that. And once you create the project, I've already created one, you can see with the name P101. You can come over here and you can go and discover the resources. Now you can go and discover the resources. The recommendation is that you go and deploy an appliance. And as mentioned before, it caters to any kind of environment, whether it's physical or virtualized, I can pick that too. Now in this case, for the Woodgrove Bank, we are dealing with VMware. So let's go and pick that. You can give the name for the appliance over here. And this project requires to deploy a OVA file basically. So you can go and deploy this on a virtual machine and deploy the appliance. And then you can go and register your appliance with the migration services. And once this is deployed, you can go and run this assessment. So let me show you that too. So for this example, what I did is that you can see I've discovered 10 servers over here. This gives me a breakdown of what operating system we are talking about. So in this case, we have 2 for Linux and 8 for Windows. I've already created the group, basically, the one when I was talking about in case you want to move your resources in group. Like, for example, if you have a front end and a back end, you don't want to leave one and then move the other. You want to move them in group, right? So you can create groups over here. But after your resources are discovered, you can go and assess that. In this case, we are talking about VM assessment. You can go and specify what kind of assessment we are talking about, how your resources were imported, whether that was done through migration appliance or you just imported the CSV file. You can also tweak what specifically you want in your assessment. You can specify what is your preferred region for deployment. Now, in this case, it's Canada East. I'm going to change that to Canada Central. As you know, on the Azure side, you have different services tier for the storage. If you want to assess this against only specific kind of tiers, you can also go and uncheck the box, or you can enable for everything if you want. So that option is also there. You can also look at the cost, how it's going to look like in case you want to reserve it or maybe apply cost optimization through saving plans. So that also is possible. Sizing criteria can be performance-based or as on-prem. My recommendation is that you should do a performance-based, because with this, we get to know the highs and lows of your machines over a period of time. So can intelligently gives an idea about what should be the right sizing on the Azure side. So all these things are configurable. You can always obviously change the currency here. You can also enable hybrid benefit in case if you have software assurance. And you can also enable if you want to have your assessment done with the cost for the Defender for Cloud. So that also is there. So all these things can be tweaked, as you can see. So what I did is for this example, I've already created a group, as you can see, with the name Contoso. And I've just assessed one machine. As you can see here, I can go and click on the view assessment and see what are the recommendations for this specific machine. Let's go and so you can see the first thing which is pretty visible for me, that this machine, I got a green check mark. It means that I don't have any errors. So this machine is clean to be moved to the cloud. So that's good. I get my monthly cost. So I get the compute cost and the storage where your majority of your cost is going to come from. I can further go into the cost details. So I can click over here. And for this machine, the recommendation is that I should be deploying A4v2. So that's a recommendation for this specific server. And again, in this view, I also get the complete visibility into what should be the right, what should be the compute cost, which is going to come from, because Your instance that you're going to deploy on Azure is broken down to you have the compute cost and you have the storage cost, and that's what you see in this view. And by the way, this can be always downloaded. It can be exported in case you want to do the presentation. But as it was mentioned earlier, if you want, you can offload these services to Ingram Micro. We have done these assessments and after that actual migration multiple times for our partners. So in case you want that services to be utilized, feel free to do that, and we'll be more than happy, to connect with that team. But this is how you're going to assess. And once the assessment is done, we can use the same tool. As I mentioned before, this is a two-in-one option. You can go assess the machine, and then you can also finally migrate these resources into Azure. You don't need to do any other deployment for this. So with this, we have also successfully moved Woodgrove Bank into Azure too, and they're pretty happy with that. With that, let me go back to the presentation and talk about some of the cost optimization options which are there that it can be utilized. So one thing is moving to the cloud is one thing, obviously, right? But there should be a little bit mind shift the way we have been doing our businesses on-prem. Typically, in your on-prem environment, you don't go and switch off your machines or deallocate your machine. But just the way the nature of the business is in cloud, you are charged for how long your machines are running. To put it in simple terms, these are all per hour billing. That's why these are some of the cost optimization tips that I want to highlight. Now, first thing is right sizing your machine is very important. And that's what we discussed in the case of Woodgrove Bank. We did the assessment, and based on that, the recommendations were made. So that's part of the cost optimization for you. Another important component to this is utilizing our reservation and saving plan, which are typically utilized for 1 year or 3-year term. And if you go and implement this, you have a saving of close to 60% on an average, depending upon the service and the instance we are talking about. But these are great ways of also optimizing the cost once your workloads are settled in your subscription. On top of that, there might be a scenario in which people they have on-prem Windows Server licensing with software assurance. So if you're in that kind of category, you can always make use of hybrid benefit, and you can also enable that option. So in that case, for that particular term, you're not going to pay for the licensing, because as you know, once you go and deploy your resources, by default in your entire consumption, your licensing cost is also included. But in case you have SA, you can make use of these hybrid benefit. Then you also have spot instances. Now, these specifically are designed for workloads which are not production grade. So maybe if you just want to test out the environment, how the service is going to behave, and a lot of time we want to do that, you can make use of Azure Spot Instance, and you save almost close to 80% as compared to the pay-as-you-go model. So a lot of companies which want to test a certain service, they want to utilize Azure Spot Instance. Because if I'm paying, let's say, for example, $100 pay as you go, you just have to pay maybe $20 for the spot instances. So another great way of saving on the cost, especially for test and dev kind of environment. And then again, as I mentioned, you're getting charged for how long your machines are running. So if you know that there is a business which are not doesn't require these workloads, maybe during the night time or on the weekend, you can always deploy the automation. So you can schedule this. All this can be automated through the automation account. So that's part of Azure services that can be enabled to start and stop your machines at specific time. And also on top of that, you want to resize, which you can utilize Azure Advisor as a tool which makes recommendation of what should be the right size of your workloads. And then finally, in certain cases, maybe most of the time what we see is that people, they start with infrastructure as a service, which gives you, by the way, most control when it comes to accessing these resources. But in case there is a possibility, people, they can always transition from infrastructure as a service to some of the PaaS offering, whether it's an Azure Web App Services or SQL Database as a service. So there might be some options of cost saving in that too. But these are some of the options, at least steps from our side, you can go and implement. But this is something that you need to be on top of always. It's not that once you enable that, because on the Azure side, the things are evolving always, or in fact, with any public cloud. So you always need to be on top of the game. And wherever you can save money, you can do that. If you want to talk to us about this, right, please feel free to loop us on the call. We can discuss. But some of these options definitely will save you a lot of money in your monthly consumption. So with this, I'm going to pause here to see, Karan, if there is any question in the chat.
No, thanks, Girish. Don't see anything in the chat, but anyone who wants to come off mute, please, if there are any questions, we can have a couple of minutes to discuss those. The floor is open for anyone who has any questions.
Sorry, I just adjusted the settings, so if anyone does want to come off mute, they are able to at this moment.
Oh, okay.
I know Majdi, you said you can't unmute, so you can try it now. I believe you should be able to. I see Majdi asked, what are the best cost optimizing strategies on Azure Cloud in your opinion?
That's
Like
a good
best
question.
places to get started. Yep.
Sorry, best places?
To get started, that's what is written. So yeah, basically where to start with, Girish.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, right, it depends upon where the customer is in the journey. So my recommendation always to the partner is that, let's say, for example, let's take an hypothetical scenario. The customer just recently moved into cloud, right? This is their maybe first week or maybe first month. Our recommendation is always you want to let the workload settle down. Now, what I mean by that is that you got to see, how the performance of your workload is. If you're consistently hitting your CPU limit, let's say 80%, 90%, it means that you need to upgrade your machine, right? In terms of compute power. And once you upgrade the machine and then you see how the consistency is in terms of performance, and at that particular stage, you want to maybe utilize maybe saving plan, reservation, or even combination of both. If you have already, you're matured enough in cloud and you have not implemented any cloud optimization, then you should definitely have a discussion with us because we are leaving a lot of money on the table. So depend upon, again, on the scenario where the customer is just starting, I will let the workload settle down. If you're already matured, the machines and the performance is consistent, we will definitely look at reservation saving plans in that case.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I was even like maybe alluding to if you're dealing with more of a like technical audience, like would you go as so far as to suggest maybe like integrating an app engine or going to like cluster blobs or something like this, or do you think that's a little too advanced for
Yeah,
talking to clients?
yeah. So no, when it comes to no, I believe you're talking about blob. You're talking about blob storage, right?
Correct.
Right. So
Yes,
when it comes
yes.
to, yeah, so when it comes to reservation, right, it depends upon different services. Now, when we talk about reserve instances, let's say specifically, that applies to VMs only, right? But when it comes to blob storage, then we're talking about the reservation. Now, specifically about the blob storage, then you need to be in specific tier. Let's say, for example, if I have only, I'm taking example, only 500 gig, you cannot enable reservation in that case, right? So if you fall under that particular tier, like for example, with Azure File Storage, if I'm not mistaken, it's 10 terabyte minimum that you have, you can purchase in that particular block. So if you have at least that much capacity, definitely I want to utilize a reservation in that case. But one specific thing I want to also mention, and I'm sure you might be already utilizing this, is Azure Advisor Services.
No, actually,
So,
I'm not. What is this?
so Azure Advisor is, by the way, is a free tool that you can go. So if you go and actually search in the Azure portal, it will take you to that. Actually, if you want, I can just quickly show you. You
Advisors.
still see my
Yeah.
screen, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, because this tool, what it does is it will make recommendation for you.
Oh, nice.
And it made recommendation just not from the cost optimization. It built on the 6 pillars of best practices. You can also right size these machines based on the recommendation. So this is what I'm talking about. So cost is
good.
one pillar. Security, reliability, all these things are there. So you can definitely look into this. You can also go and configure the right sizing of your machine. You can see right over here.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do that. So I will recommend definitely look at this tool
I will. Yeah.
To see how that's going to work for you from cost optimization perspective. Yeah.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No, these are great questions, right? Because we see the number one thing that we hear from the partner is people, they start with obviously cloud and then over a period of time, right? Then cost implications and because budget are limited only. So wherever we can save money, that can be used to maybe to add other security services in the environment. So yeah, definitely, great services.
Yeah, and I'll go back to what you mentioned about looking at the gigabyte storage and seeing if what's applicable at that tier. I think that's important as well.
For sure.
Also, Majdi, great having you on this webinar as well. I knew I recognized your name and voice. He was in attendance of our 2-day Microsoft security event on Wednesday, was it Tuesday, Wednesday? So great to
Correct.
see you here as well. And hope to see you next week at our Copilot event on May 15th, everyone. We do have a Microsoft Copilot event in person in Mississauga. We're going to have a lot of Microsoft folks from there, about 8 to 10 of them too. So great opportunity. I'll drop the link for registration in the chat. But sorry, Majdi, I cut you off there.
No, I was just I love these like mix of in-person events and webinars. It gives us a chance to go play with the products and then see you again next week. So I'm looking forward to that.
For
Thank you.
sure. See you next week. But I'll pass it back to you, Girish and Karan as well. If anyone has any additional questions too.
Yeah, if there are more questions, feel free to let us know. If not, then just one last thing. We do have a partner frequency incentive program within Ingram. So it's across the Microsoft board. You buy any Microsoft licenses, we basically credit you back $10,000 per customer that you bring in to Ingram, and that's also capped up to like $35,000 on the partner level. It's basically the second month credit that you get back into your Ingram account. The steps are simple. You enroll and register your company. There's an MOU that you sign with your respective Azure rep, and that's it. You start transacting. But if you have more questions, our team would be more than happy to support you and kind of walk you through this program. But apart from this, if there are more questions, feel free to let us know. And yep, thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you everyone so much for your time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
You have a nice
Bye.
day. Ciao.